Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. Got a little bit of a bonus episode for you today, and I'm going to be talking about werewolves, comic books, the Wild West, Native Americans, and to do so, I've got Dirk Manning with me. Dirk, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on. And Dirk actually has a Kickstarter going on right now for his newest graphic novel, which is called Homestead. And Homestead takes place in 1868. And Dirk, would you like to fill us in a little bit on the story?
Yeah, Homestead is, as you said, this is a graphic novel, 100-page graphic novel, takes place in North Dakota, 1868. And this is a Native American Western werewolf graphic novel. I'm mainly known for my horror work. Um, I've done some other books over the years, biographies with professional wrestlers. I did a humor comic with the rap rock band Twisted. Horror is my heart. That's where my heart lives. And I'm really excited to do this book, which is just a straight up kind of old school, almost like Bernie Wrightson style, werewolf story about a two cultures, two families, family of Lakota and family of settlers in North Dakota in 1868, and what happens when their families are kind of pushed together as a result of the U.S. government's Homestead Act, and how far both families are willing to go to protect their way of life and protect their loved ones. Very emotionally investing story, very action oriented, but also very horror. As werewolves start to enter the picture very quickly, and things kind of escalate from there.
And as you mentioned on the Kickstarter page, this is not necessarily a conflict of good versus evil. These are just two sides, each looking after their families, right?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I really wanted to make sure to do with this book is this isn't a story of good guys versus bad guys, right? This isn't like the Native American, the Lakota are good and the settlers are bad. Conversely, the Lakota are not bad, the settlers aren't necessarily good. This is just two families pushed into a systemic conflict. Um, when I wrote the book, I really wanted to make sure that this is something where you can see both the good and the not good that both of our protagonist families, I guess are engaged in here. Um, it's very easy to tell a story of the very noble Native Americans, or conversely, there's been a lot of stories told about Native Americans, over the years being kind of the aggressors in this, or conversely with the settlers. And I wasn't interested in doing that. I wanted a story where this is two families, neither one's necessarily good or bad. They're both trying to defend their way of life. They're trying to defend their families. They're trying to defend their loved ones, and what happens as a result of that. So this is going to be a story that ideally people check out the book. And again, like you said, on Kickstarter right now, you go to homesteadcomic.com. You can see some preview art, see more about the story. My hope is that people that support the Kickstarter get the book. This is a book they're going to go back to reread again and again due to the nuance of the relationships of those characters, and maybe trying to, ideally maybe have some like uh, vacillating feelings about kind of who's in the right here and who's not, and what's going on and who they're rooting for. It's a very emotionally complex story with werewolves and all kinds of horror action as well.
And this is one and done, correct? It's not part of a series.
Yeah, yeah. This is an original graphic novel. This is one and done. It's funny. I was talking to the team. Les Garner, the artist co-creator of the book. Raul Blackhawk is our Lakota creative consultant on the book, and they both were kind of like, "Are we gonna do more with this? Are we gonna do more with this?" And there are ways to do more with this. I don't want to give anything away in the book, but I mean, obviously, there's a lot to unpack in the story. But to me, ultimately, I saw a lot of value in this being a one and done story, right? A lot of other series I do, Tales of Mystery. I just gave the script for Volume 6 to the artist. I just wrapped up a Kickstarter recently for the second volume of Hope. Nightmare World is we did the 20th anniversary edition of Nightmare World, but this is like a 500-page book, So to me, there's a lot of value in kind of getting back to here's a one and done 100-page graphic novel. This encompasses the whole story, and then this is it. Uh, I'm not saying that maybe we won't go back to do potentially. The team has talked about doing more, maybe Native American folk horror later down the road. But as far as Homestead goes, this is the story. So if you're not familiar with my work, you want to jump in and just check out something I've done, or just get a good one and done graphic novel, the Kickstarter exclusive hardcover with all the stretch goals we've unlocked. This is a good way to jump in, or just put your toe in the pond, see if you like what we offer, and then go from there if you'd like.
You mentioned Les Garner and Raul Blackhawk. Talk a little bit more about the team that you assembled for this project.
Yeah, Les, I actually met 11 years ago, and some of the first words out of my mouth were, "I have just a story that I would like to work with you on." So this is a story that's been bubbling for a very, very long time. He was working on a series called Apocalypse Girl, and I was working on Nightmare World and Tales of Mystery. And I said, "Look, you finish Apocalypse Girl, get that published," which we eventually, helped get that published through SourcePoint Press. I said, "Then we'll get to Homestead." In the meantime, I had a couple books I was wrapping up at the time. I was also still doing a lot of research on this book, and one of the things I realized is that I can be very passionate about this book and be very passionate about this story. But given that it is so deeply ingrained in the Lakota culture, I needed to find someone who could, from the Lakota culture, that could help me really make sure I'm portraying things accurately, portraying things properly, which is where I met Raul Blackhawk. We've become very good friends, both him and I, and then him and Les, we all kind of like have a lot in common. We all are like big heavy metal guys and stuff like that. We're comic people, things like that. We're all just kind of like, spirit brothers in a way that we all like a lot of the same stuff. We sometimes even traveled the same circles. So it was very nerve wracking for me, having researched this story and worked on this story for 10 years, to then hand it off to Rao, who I had developed a lot of respect for, and talking to him and things like that. Just like, here you go. And he loved the story. He loved the story, which I was like, okay. He goes, "Dirk, the story's great. This is excellent." He goes, "I love this." He goes, "I love how you represented the culture and things like that." But then he started going after some of the nuance of it. And he's like, an example is like, "What's this word right here that they keep using?" I said, "Well, my impression, I go, that's supposed, everything I've researched, that's the word of how Lakota would refer to a white person, a settler." He goes, "No, that's just gibberish." He goes, "That's not even anything." And here I am, 10 years of research on this and cross-referenced everything all these different ways. Like, no. But again, surprise, surprise, the Lakota language is not necessarily easily found or transferable on the internet or even in books, right? It's a spoken culture, it's a spoken language. So some of that, and bringing in Rao just for some of the cultural, again, the nuance of it, to make sure that really we were representing it properly. An example I love to tell is there's a scene in the book where two of the Lakota members of the tribe, one says to the other, "I love you." And Rao explained to me that they don't express that sentiment with those words. They don't say, "I love you." How they would express that feeling for someone is they say, "I will suffer for you." And that really helped underscore kind of, I think, the theme of the book, right? On both sides. It's like, it's easy to tell people you love them. Will you suffer for them? Are you so committed to that person? I hate to talk about suffering in the Happy Moment podcast here, right? But but still, things like that really, I think, help truly authenticate what we were doing, and then allowed us to approach some of, again, and I hate to keep using the word nuance, but the nuance of the story appropriately. For coloring, we then brought in Colin Johnson. He worked on some other stuff for SourcePoint Press, including Nightwalkers, things like that. Very versatile colorist, very incredible guy, very nice guy. I really enjoy working with him. Dave Lentz is doing the lettering. Drina Joe is our editor on the book. She's fantastic. She's edited many of my books for several years now. One of the best freelance editors in the business. And then we're publishing the book through SourcePoint Press. Again, people that go on the Kickstarter will be able to get the Kickstarter exclusive hardcover edition of the book with like the silver gilded pages and the silver logo, the ribbon bookmark, the triple signed book plate. And we're closing in on unlocking a free bonus werewolf pin for everyone. That's only if you back the Kickstarter. You will be able to get the book through SourcePoint Press later through Amazon, Simon Schuster, things like that, comic shops. But you would get the trade paperback edition of the book, not the super tricked out version that we're offering through the Kickstarter. So top to bottom, from artist, co-creator, to creative consultant, to colorist, to letterer, to publisher, I really feel we have a real dream team on this book, and really, it makes the wait worth it. Again, I've been working on this book for over a decade, and to finally now be in this spot, to be able to publish this book with this team, with this degree of pedigree, it shows you that, everything in its season, everything at the right time, and this was the right time with the right people.
Awesome, very cool. And you mentioned that you've had this idea for this book for quite a few years.
Yeah,
You've been in the business for quite a while, haven't you?
this is my 21st year as a published comic creator. My first series I ever wrote, Nightmare World, was one of the original comics to kind of start the online webcomic distribution system. And we just published through SourcePoint Press the 20th anniversary edition of the whole series. So
Wow.
yeah, I've been around a minute. It explains the graying temples and stuff like that. you know? It's funny. I just did I do a lot of conventions. I just did a convention this weekend, and at the town where I went to college at a convention, and because I'm an alumni, the college brings me back for their comic convention every year. So I love to go, and it's to a point now where people I know are bringing or sending their kids to meet me who are the age that I was when I knew their parents. Right? And it's like looking at little like mini me versions of them, and I'm like, oh my god, what's going on? Like, how is everyone getting older, but I'm staying the same age? What's happening here? So yeah, I've been doing this for a minute, 21 years now, and last year I published my 20th graphic novel in 20 years, and we're escalating that schedule more and more here, moving into the next couple of years here, and I'm just feel very fortunate to be able to have these opportunities to work with such great people and make these comics, and people to read them, people to support them on Kickstarter. Uh, it's really cool.
That's awesome. Well, you've had a great career. Congratulations on that. And uh, what made you decide this is the path you wanted to take?
I tell people that being a writer is not a job; it's a curse. It's like like somehow my parents must have like offended some sort of like magician or wizard or witch or something, and like your child will be a writer, and being a writer is like having homework every day for the rest of your life, right? But no, I've always, it's just, I don't know, it's baked in, right? I've always just had that thing. It's like I'm just a writer, and I'm going to be a writer, and that was it. It chooses you. Um, but the medium of comics specifically, I didn't really get into until I was a teenager. I didn't read a lot of comics when I was little, things like that. But I love the medium. I love how you can tell stories through the juxtaposition of still images and words and text, whether it be narration or whether it be dialogue, and then getting to bring the art to the forefront, as well as playing into that with the artists. I love the comic book medium. I'm a horror baby at heart, but I'm also very much a fan of comic books. You can see my office; I'm surrounded by graphic novels. I love this medium very, very much. I love the opportunities it's given me professionally. I love the joy it's brought me personally. And there's a way to tell stories in comic books that you can't tell any other way. And that brings me my happy moment. Is getting to sit down and read comic books, enjoy it, and we're living in such a golden age of creator-owned comics right now. But it's just I don't know. I don't know if I would be as happy telling the stories any other way as I am this way.
Very cool. And when you were first getting started reading comics, were there any particular ones that stood out as like an inspiration, or like any writers or artists that you really enjoyed a lot?
Yeah, like I said, I didn't really start really discovering comic books till I was a teenager. And three of the first graphic novels I read that really kind of I think got baked into my DNA as a creator I really came out of the box pretty hot. The three of the first graphic novels I read were Watchmen by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, which, a lot of people talk about that being one of the most influential graphic novels of all time, which it is, not so much for the story as for the way they tell the story. The mechanics of comic book storytelling in that book are so powerful. The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller was in those first three. And third was The Crow by James O'Barr. Those are three hard-hitting graphic novels to discover when you first start getting into the medium of comic books, right? I've gone on. I'm a huge fan of Alan Moore as a writer. I really like a lot of his work. Eric Powell is one of the best illustrators I think to ever grace the medium, as far as I'm concerned. Gosh, I hate going down the list because there's somebody, Dave Lapham is someone who I really like. Called Stray Bullets. I'm trying to think of like the more obscure stuff rather than stuff I know. Junji Ito is a manga artist, a writer and artist. Probably one of the best comic book creators of all time. Easily written the scariest graphic novel I've ever written, that I've ever read. Sorry, called Uzumaki. It's about a town that becomes obsessed with spirals. And it's so simple. It is legitimately one of the scariest graphic novels I've ever read.
I'll have to check that out.
Oh, dude, it's incredible. It's incredible. I'm getting heart palpitations just thinking about it right now. Peter Cooper was another guy that I think doesn't get nearly enough love. I read a lot of his stuff when I was coming up. Peter David's run on The Incredible Hulk is, I think, one of the best comic book runs ever done with a character that so many people would write off so easily. I named that I could probably think of a million more if I kept going. Just look around my office, right? Who takes up the most space here? But I loved discovering the writers. I loved discovering the artists and getting to follow different creators onto different titles, and then seeing a lot of these creators go do their own titles and stuff like that was just really fascinating process, journey for me to take. And I was very grateful for, because I got into comics as such a voracious reader. I loved the idea that if I found titles I liked, there'd be more every month. That was the biggest attraction. That was the initial attraction of comic books to me, before discovering the art and the art form and the way that you can tell stories through this medium. It was like, I'll always get more stuff if I like it. So like the Howard Mackey, and then, Tex did a big run as Javier did as well on Ghost Rider. Like, here's this like satanic flaming skeleton who's a biker. Wow, he's a demon. Cool. If I like this character, I get more every month. That's awesome. So that was kind of the draw to me originally, was the fact that I could read more and more. And then you just discover other creators as you go and recommendations, and go from there.
With Homestead, what made you go with a werewolf? I know you said you're big into horror.
I am big into horror. Homestead started originally as a 8-page story for Nightmare World, because with Nightmare World, I wanted to show all the different things you could do under the umbrella of horror. So, eventually you want to do like a ghost story, you want to do a zombie story, you want to do a werewolf story, you want to do Cthulhu story, you want those different stuff. And I realized that 8 pages was not enough for this story. And side note, I went on to go do them a stick figure Wolfman story in Nightmare World. Ironically enough, now I'm actually working with a Cheney Estate, who, the original Wolfman. What a world. So I pulled Homestead out of Nightmare World, and that was going to originally be like the werewolf story in the Nightmare World series. So that was kind of the motivation there. And werewolves are such a big part of pop culture and horror culture. There's the old Fox TV show Werewolf, which was incredible, and of course the Wolfman. But that was it originally. It was like, what is a story I would tell about a werewolf? Once I realized there was more to the story than I could do justice to properly in Nightmare World. It was a serviceable 8-page story, but I felt it was too rushed even for that. I took it out, and I was going to make it part of Love Stories to Die For as a 22-page story, and I wrote the script for that, and I was very happy with it. but I still felt there was more there. So then eventually it became Homestead as a fully developed 4-issue miniseries, and an original graphic novel now. But with Werewolves proper, I read I read this thing online about how it was some ridiculously high percentage of guys think that they could like beat a lion in a fight or beat a bear in a fight. Right. It's like you ask them, it's like these guys that say, "Oh, if I just see red, you better look out." It's like, okay, that's not how that works if you have someone who's an experienced trained fighter, but you believe that all you want. Tough guy. And werewolves to me are like the ultimate form of that. About here's like this giant savage killing machine who everyone thinks they're a badass, but what happens when you put a werewolf in front of them? The fact that they are nigh unstoppable unless you have silver and all these other factors. And when you're writing a horror story and you're writing about a threat or a menace, werewolves are kind of the pinnacle of like really hard to kill because you have to have a very specific thing to do it. And if you're out in 1868 North Dakota, you probably don't have a lot of silver lying around. If you even know that's what kills a werewolf, right? So that was something I wanted to explore because people, I think in movies and stuff like that nowadays get accustomed to the fact that, oh, well, you just grab a gun or you just grab this, and the real world's not always that way, right? And especially when you look at 1868 North Dakota, how much silver do they have lying around? So to me, it really amplified the horror aspect of it as a creature that would be exceptionally dangerous and exceptionally scary in these circumstances.
Do you have a favorite werewolf movie?
One of my favorite werewolf things is actually a show, and I mentioned it a moment ago. When the Fox TV network started, there was a show called Werewolf, and it was so good. The werewolves are just these big, just huge, muscular, like 7 feet tall, and basically the show Werewolf was like the old TV show The Incredible Hulk with a werewolf instead of a big green gamma monster. It's like this guy wandering around trying to find the original werewolf in the line because if he kills him, he won't be a werewolf anymore. But then of course you got American Werewolf in London is great. A newer werewolf movie came a couple years back, Late Phases, Angry Old Man versus Werewolf. It's a lot of fun. But I always go back to the TV show Werewolf. To me, I think is like one of the definitive werewolf things to me. Aside from, of course, you got like the Wolfman, which again, that's the OG. As far as I'm concerned, that's the whole transformation scene. Everything is so good.
Absolutely, yeah. You had earlier you touched on the Kickstarter goals a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a closer look at those. Because for the hardcover book, we've got several upgrades already for it. I believe we've already got some silver gilded pages. We've got a silver embossed bookmark, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we got, well, going from the bottom up, we have again, the only way to get the hardcover edition of the book is through the Kickstarter. After that, you'll get the trade paperback edition. You'll get the soft cover. You can't get the hardcover ever again. Print to order, it's done. But we've unlocked 8 stretch goals. So you get if you back it on Kickstarter, you get a book for the hardcover. As long as you back it with a hardcover, and you can get like the werewolf mini bust with it, you can get the T-shirt with it. Any pledge that includes the hardcover, you get a book plate signed by me, signed by Les Garner, signed by Raoul Blackhawk. It has a remarked sketch on it from Les Garner, so he's doing little sketches on them. Then you're also going to get a wraparound cover on the hardcover, a silver ribbon bookmark, a silver embossed logo, silver gilded pages, all that for free, for U.S. shipping on the campaign as well. What you see is what you pay. What you pledge is what you pay. There's no extra shipping cost. And right now we're marching towards 20,000 in pledges. And if we get there, by the time the campaign ends on April Fool's Day at 5 p.m. Eastern, you'll get a werewolf pin as well. All for free with your book, with your pledge.
Now you've got a lot of cool stuff here. This isn't going to be like some big April Fool's joke, is it? Like,
No,
surprise, no, this is
like,
actually real.
no fooling. This is no fooling. Yeah, I've run
Okay.
many campaigns, and people would joke about the big box of Dirk, right? It's like, oh, your package comes and you get you pledge for the book, but then you get all this extra stuff in it. But in this campaign, like you said, you can actually get mini werewolf busts. You can get T-shirts with the Homestead cover on them by less, and as long as your pledge level includes that hardcover, so you get the hardcover of the shirt, the hardcover of the mini bust. My favorite pledge level is always to give me everything, because you get the book, all the stretch goals, the mini bust, the werewolf mini bust, which is designed by Les Garner, our illustrator, did the mini busts as well, and you get the T-shirt with his cover on it, and 8, hopefully 9, by the time the campaign ends. We'll see where it lands. Stretch goals. I mean, I love the give me everything. That just gets you all the cool stuff in the campaign. One swoop, discounted price, freeway shipping. It's a bane to my publishers, because I always use the Kickstarter pay it forward, right? I keep giving people more and more stuff for free, which, not to get in the business aspect of it too much, but that diminishes my profit. I don't care. I just want to hook up the people that make the book possible. So that's what I'm all about here, is just paying it forward to everybody and giving them a really positive experience with the work.
Now, you've used Kickstarter before, so going into this one for Homestead, did you have any kind of expectations for how much you'd be able to raise?
I never take anything for granted. I a lot of times, like, I cry when we get funded, because running a Kickstarter, it's a very vulnerable process. Um, this was an original IP, an original intellectual property, something brand new. I've teased it for a while, but then to put it out, I'm always just happy we get funded. We had the funding goal to $6,666. Staying on brand as a horror guy. You know, um, I was just delighted when we did that, and then we hit 10. We hit 10K in about 24 hours, which just blew me away. And now, like I said, we got about 6 days left in the campaign as we're talking. We're over $19,000 in pledges. Yeah, it really humbles me. I've done over $500,000 on Kickstarter at this point. But it's still humbling. I always just hope we can get funded, is really what I want, and I try to set it up in a way that we can get funded. The book will come out. You guys have dreams like, oh my gosh, we hit 20,000, or oh my gosh, we hit 10,000, and it's always humbling, because again, when you do something on Kickstarter, it's out there in the wide open, man. There's no fudging the numbers. This is what we have. I'm not sitting there, with like a fake mustache on, pledging on my own book. You know what I mean? It's like, this is it, and this is what we do. So I was fairly confident that we would get funded. Full disclosure, obviously, my track record on this stuff's pretty good, but closing in on $20,000 with a week left in the campaign is it's humbling. And that's why I just continue to pay it forward by giving people more free stuff. Right? It's a stretch goal party at this point. Just my way to say thank you.
Very cool. Now, there may be someone out there who listens to this and, maybe they're interested in, one day writing their own comic book and possibly using Kickstarter to help fund it. Would you have any advice or words of wisdom for those people?
It'll be a shill from one. Just came out on Amazon again recently. The second edition of Right or Wrong, the Writer Creating Comics. This is everything I can tell everybody. Everything I could tell anyone about the writing process. Going from finding the stories you want to tell to how to best build your team. Again, you want to make sure you get the second edition. Just came out. There's a first edition as well, but this one's updated. That's about writing the story. Finding the story that you want to tell. In regards to crowdfunding, which I don't touch on too much in this first edition, the first volume of Right or Wrong, this is going to sound really flippant, and I always preface this by saying I don't mean this to be cute. I don't mean this to be dismissive. But in order to crowdfund, you have to have a crowd, right? And what you'll find is, even though you may have a huge crowd, usually maybe 10% of your people will jump in on a Kickstarter, right? So the pre-gaming on doing a Kickstarter, building up your crowd, through social media, through conventions, through having a website, through just developing a reputation for your work, and putting yourself in that public spotlight. It's again, it's difficult. It's scary. It's when you're succeeding, it's wonderful. When you're stumbling, it's agonizing. Again, I want to say the happy moments here. But when you're going to do a Kickstarter, you need any crowdfunding. You have to have a crowd. You can meet, in this case here with you and I, right? You can meet new people through Kickstarter, through the platform, and that's very helpful. But in order to ensure the highest likelihood of success possible, you really do want to kind of have a crowd and then know how to activate them. And say, okay, here's what we're going to do. 30 days, we need to sell this many books, and then we can make it possible. And if we sell this many more, you'll get this. And this many more, you get this. So I have partially written the second volume of Right or Wrong, which I talk about now that you have the comic, right? What do you do with it? And I think a lot of that book's going to talk about Kickstarter and crowdfunding as well. But yeah, in order to crowdfund, you have to have a crowd. You have to be able to activate that crowd. It's very difficult not to have a social media presence, not to have an online presence, and go out there and put a book on Kickstarter. It's just going to be a much tougher road to traverse in order to get there. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's not. But take the time to build up your crowd first. Get out there, do conventions, build a positive presence on social media, do signings, have a newsletter, let people know you're out there. That'll help maximize your chances for success.
You've mentioned your Nightmare World book. You mentioned Right or Wrong. You've held both of those up. Can you hold those up again for me?
Yeah. So this is the second edition, Right or Wrong.
Okay.
And this is a big one, the 20th anniversary edition, Nightmare World, the complete collection.
So I want to ask you, so looking back, is it kind of like a surreal feeling to look at those books and be like, I created this, I did that?
Oh yeah. Like I said, the 20th anniversary edition of Nightmare World. And it's never looked better than in this new trade paperback. This book was out of print for a little bit. And I approach writing in a way that I want all my books to be available at all times for anybody to get into, because I can still stand by Nightmare World. But be able to take the whole series like this and just go, what a feeling, and looking back at Nightmare World, which this was the first comic book series I ever wrote, and I'm looking at The Same Deep Water as You, which is one of the stories in here. I'm looking at Moving On. I'm looking at Violet. I'm looking at Not For You. I'm looking at Milk of Human Kindness. And these stories, Welcome to the Jungle, Bitter Wine, they, Praise Be the Lord, they hold up, And I hate saying that because, again, I wrote it. So, of course, there's that argument to be made that, of course, you like it. It's very easy as a creative type to not like your work, But again, I did 2 conventions this month, and people really excited. It's interesting because there's a whole generation of my readers that didn't get into Nightmare World the first time and get to go back and read it. And I can tell you, I have never done a convention in all my years as a writer doing conventions. I've never done a convention where I've not sold a copy of Nightmare World in some form. So yeah, it's just wild. And then, Right or Wrong, again, the book I put together to help people make comics. It's an honor to be able to pay it forward. I always said if I got to the point where I was getting to make comics, I would do everything I could to help other people make comics. It's very important to me. I had some people help me out when I was getting started, and I believe the world would be a better place if we all just help each other out a little bit. Give each other a hand up. Raise people up. I think we live in a society where, sadly, a lot of people take the path of pushing down or kicking when people are down, to get themselves over, to get themselves that dopamine hit, to make themselves feel uh, special, or virtuous even. And we're just in a very interesting place. We're still largely in the infancy of social media and learning how to navigate that path and how to get yourself out there. And to me, I would just love to see more people take the time to pay it forward somehow. Like I said, this is my 21st year as a creator. I've had the highest of highs and I've had the lowest of lows. But to me, ultimately, the most important thing you can do, along with creating work that is resonant to people and that speaks to them and either enlightens them or entertains them or inspires them, is do things to help people, whether it be just help them have a little joy or help them fulfill their dreams. People come to me at conventions all the time, just like I did before I was getting started. I would go to conventions to meet creators and talk to them. So I wrote Right or Wrong to tell people, look, I'm not trying to bilk you for $20, but here's hours of what I can tell you. And then I always give people my card and I say, after you read this book, if you still have questions, email me. Or here's all my social media. Get a hold of me after you read the book. And if you still have questions, I can talk to you more from there. And as cool as it is to have my own table with all my own books, I don't want to cry when I say this, but I get sentimental about this. I've had people read Right or Wrong. And a year later or so, they bring me a comic they made. And it's really cool, man. I hate to be so sentimental to horror guys. Should be spookier, I guess. But
No, you're fine. This is a happy moment.
a happy moment, right? This is truly a happy moment. Yeah, very good call. It's really awesome, to answer your question, to have my own work, that you asked a minute ago, and to look back at my work. But to know that I can give other people the opportunity to have that moment of happiness, that happy moment, right? To make their own book. By making your own book, you're ahead of 99% of the people who talk about it. And make one thing, And then if you make a book that sells more than 100 copies, you've sold, I think it's more than 90% of any published author. It's neat. It's off camera. You can't see it. I have an old school spinner rack. And I'm talking like old metal. This one has like Richie Rich, Spider-Man, Archie, and Superman all on the top of it, right? It's like, you could never get all of them together in one thing now. The old-timey one. And I always said my goal when I started was, well, not when I started. The goal is to publish a book. That's to publish all of Nightmare World. That's to get all of Nightmare World published in one leather-bound collection. Then it's to get Mr. Republished, right? So the goalpost always changes. But ultimately, the goalpost always moves. But ultimately, the big goal became, what if I could fill a spinner rack? Not with my own comics, but with my own graphic novels. Right? And I'm 10 away. And if all goes according to plan, in the next 12 months, I'm going to have Hope 2, Homestead, the graphic novel adaptation of London After Midnight, and an unnamed horror thing I can't talk about yet. Then I'm 6 away. And I'm not saying I'll retire at that point, but I hope I can get there, right? To fill a spinner rack with all my own graphic novels. That'd be pretty.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be really cool, man. That'd be really cool. Then, of course, it'll be fill 2 spinner racks, or it'll be fill a bookcase, right? Again, the goalpost always moves. But the other thing I've learned through this journey, and we talk about, the happy moment. I've always been very much a workaholic, and for many years of my career, I didn't take the time to have those happy moments. I didn't take the time to step back and enjoy and appreciate what I was doing, because you're always on to the next thing. You're always on to the next thing. Like I said earlier, being a writer is like having homework every day the rest of your life. I'm trying to take time now in my elder statesman part of my career, I guess. 21 years in, 9 years from the watch, it is to take time to enjoy it a little bit more. I guess that's the other thing I would tell people too, is I always tell people enjoy the journey, but take the time to enjoy those happy moments. Take that time to appreciate the fact, oh my gosh, I'm writing something, and I'm getting to publish it, and maybe one random person will buy it and read it one day. That's incredible. That's such a cool thing. Enjoy that. Don't fall into the trap of always chasing the ever-moving oasis out in the desert that we keep running towards. It keeps getting farther away from you. And take the time to enjoy it and be happy with what you're doing. That's very important. It's very important to have that happy moment.
There you go. Dirk, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And everyone, just a reminder, we got a little less than a week to go on the Kickstarter. It's going to be ending on April 1st.
No
Now,
fooling.
no fooling. Now, if you can't make it for the Kickstarter, the paperback will be available later on. However, if you're interested in the hardcover edition with all the extras, you're gonna want to get on its Kickstarter before it ends. Dirk, would you like to add any closing words here for Homestead?
Yeah, again, homesteadcomic.com. Go into kickstarter.com, type in Homestead, you'll find it. I'm really excited about this book. Like I said, I've been doing this for 21 years now, and I truly believe this is a book that's going to quickly rise to the top in regards to people's favorite things that we produced. So if you're new to my book or new to my work through this interview, I appreciate you taking the time to listen this long. I encourage you to go check it out. Homesteadcomic.com. As long as you get that hardcover edition of the book, it's for US shipping. And that's how you get all the stretch goals. You get a big box of stuff for free with your pledge. So I hope you all check it out, homesteadcomic.com. And Dan, again, thank you so much for having me on. This has been a really, really pleasure to chat with you. Thank you.
And just real quick, if people want to learn more about your other work, I believe your website is dirkmanning.com.
Dirkmanning.com is my website. You can find me on most social media at Dirk Manning. Look for the picture of the top, the guy at the top hat and the scarf. And that's me. That's my brand. You'll find my work there. Or, like you said, dirkmanning.com.
Awesome. Well, Dirk, thank you again so much. And thank you to everyone who listens to this. I appreciate it. You can find more about my podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Just search for A Happy Moment. And I will see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.